All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking real music in real time for a few real people out there just like you and just like me. All right, so the question of this video is going to be, is Lynyrd Skynyrd a tribute band? All right, Ricky Metlock is out there on one of my all-time favorite channels. No plagiarism whatsoever, but he's out there talking about how people think that Skynyrd is a tribute band. And he says, look, if you guys can do better, come on up here, step on in and become a member of Lynyrd Skynyrd. Before I get to that and why I don't think the tribute band thing is the real issue with Skynyrd, and I've talked about this before, but I figured I'd clarify it since this is in the news today. I had 3 people send me this article. And then the name of the channel, I was like, yeah, I know about that channel. Yeah, it is real music. I didn't do a copyright thing or trademark. I didn't know anything about this. I just started a YouTube channel like 8 years ago. So that's what I did. Sawyer Brown. Okay, since we're talking kind of like Southern stuff, here's Sawyer Brown, Desperado Troubadour. Fantastic album. Desperado Troubadours. Okay, there's more than one troubadour. And 40 years, and on Curb Records, which they may have been on that record label years ago, but the fact that they're back on there at this stage in their career after 40 years of slogging it out, that's pretty remarkable. Anyway, they sound exactly the way they've always sounded, so no need to do a Sawyer Brown tribute. You've got them right here. Go buy the album, help the band, support the band. Now, here's my beef with Skynyrd, and it's always been my beef with Lynyrd Skynyrd. Yes, they have 0 original members. And before I get to the main beef, where's Artemis Pyle? Why? There should have been some kind of reconciliation. Here's a guy that climbs out of the plane and escapes the plane crash. I mean, he's got a great story to tell. Was he there at the very, very beginning of Skynyrd? No. But he joined later on, and he was a very important part of that band. And he's out there touring on his own. I saw an interview he did with Mike Huckabee. It was a pretty good interview. The documentary they did about the plane crash, I watched it and just was blown away. I mean, if you haven't seen it, go watch that documentary. I forget the name of it, but try Google, and hopefully you'll find it, Artemis Pyle, Lynyrd Skynyrd documentary. I'm just wondering why, he's technically the most original guy. Although, again, you can look at Ricky Metlock because he was there at the very beginning and left and came back. And he was in this great band called Blackfoot, which nobody talks about anymore. I'd love to see a Ricky Metlock fronted Blackfoot get back together again, and maybe they can open up for the current version of Skynyrd. I think that would be awesome. So here's my beef, right? Where's the beef? Here's the beef. So Ronnie Van Zant, again, had this R&B mojo, this swagger. Like he could have been a singer in a soul band, as far as I'm concerned. R&B type music from, say, the late 60s. I think that's really where his voice and where the sound of the band was. People just think, oh, it's Southern rock, and it's like Southern R&B, a little bit of blues, a little bit of rock, well, a lot of rock, but it's all mixed together, and that's why he had such a unique sound. And Ronnie's vocals had a certain swagger to them. It's really the difference between Muscle Shoals, which is the original Skynyrd, and Nashville, which is kind of where the band is now. I'm not saying they all live in Nashville. I'm saying their sound is more Nashville than it is Muscle Shoals. So they're basically this band that tries really hard, and I think they do a pretty good job in concert of replicating that old sound. And on record, though, when you listen to their studio recordings for the past, I don't know, what, 25, 30 years, they put out albums, with the exception of the Endangered Species album, which kind of sounds like a Skynyrd album. Um, it's a different sounding band. And I think there is some of that on stage too. And look, Johnny, who stepped in and who was the younger or is the younger brother of Ronnie, did a spectacular job, right? I'm not throwing him under the bus. By the way, I like the politics of Lynyrd Skynyrd. They're a good band. I'm wearing this shirt today because the Van Zant brothers, now this is confusing, so try to stay with me. Donnie Van Zant, who was in 38 Special, and Johnny, right, got together and did this song called Sweet Florida. They also had this great band back in like the mid 2000s, like 2005, and they had a pretty big hit song called Help Somebody, right? And the album was called Get Right with the Man. So they're basically telling you to get right with God, all right? That's the slang way. And that music, by the way, in 2005, the way they produced that, the vocals of Johnny and his brother at the time, perfect for country radio, absolutely perfect. And again, the difference between Nashville and Muscle Shoals, right? And so that's been my problem. Whereas bands like Molly Hatchet, who go out there with 0 original members, manage to replicate the early days of the band, the Danny Joe Brown stuff. They really get that. The Outlaws, yeah, without Huey, they're not really the same band. But Henry Paul, you know, he's been singing these songs for a number of years, and he brings a certain amount of street credibility to it. And he was in a country band too called Black Hawk that did really well in the 1990s. And I think he's probably better suited for Blackfoot than he is being in the Outlaws. But I don't know, maybe the Outlaws have more name ID. Obviously, Black Hawk had a lot of chart success. But in the sense that, again, you're dealing with a singer who, and I'm talking about Johnny Van Zant, who is trying to replicate his brother's R&B swagger. He just doesn't have the same timbre. Again, it's like Deacon Fry taking over for Glenn Fry, right? And he doesn't really sound that much like Glenn. He sounds a little like Glenn. He looks like Glenn, which is really the reason he's there. He brings back nostalgia. He wears the Dodgers shirts and stuff where his dad used to do that back in the day. Wear the sports. If you're in a city, you wear the home team jersey and the crowd loves it. But when it comes to Johnny, he's done a good job keeping this thing afloat. But the question, is this band a tribute band? I would say no. But how much longer is this going to go for? Johnny is only 64. Ricky is 74. And these guys really are committed, probably because Gary at the end of his life said, yes, please keep going with this. You know, Southern rock never fades away. It never dies. And so, again, all of these bands have a ton of pride, and they are aligned with people from the South who love their music and who just hold this stuff in high esteem. And that's why I'm thinking, okay, if you're going to represent Skynyrd, and this isn't just a knock on Johnny, but if he doesn't really sound like Ronnie, but people are convinced enough to continue to go see the band and not hear a difference vocally, then I guess it doesn't matter, right? But that's really where my beef is. Now, should they have hired some dude who sounded like Ronnie instead of bringing his brother in? I don't know. That's not really the Southern rock way, right? This is kind of like a family business. So you pass the business down to your younger sibling and he continues the franchise. But that's been my beef, though. Again, maybe work on production. Like if you're going to do new stuff, which they are saying that they're going to put out an album at some point, look back at those early albums and try to figure out, you know, hey, how did they do that? We want to make our album sound like the early days of Skynyrd and not some country 2005 kind of thing, which sounds good. It's good music, but it's not very Skynyrd-esque. I mean, the critics, who I typically don't agree with, they rank those Johnny albums really poorly, like not even worth reviewing, 1 star, doesn't even sound like the original band. And there is some truth to that stuff. Some of those albums, by the way, are getting streamed a lot because, again, it's Skynyrd and people just love Lynyrd Skynyrd. This is a big franchise. It's a big deal. So just to wrap this up, because, again, you could say a lot about tribute bands, what makes a tribute band a tribute band. First of all, there's no ownership typically of the name. And if you own the name, then it's not a tribute band. That's more of a technicality. People are going to complain a lot about bands like the Guess Who, which are, they're currently in a bit of trouble because finally, the original guys are upset and they're just putting the hammer down. Bands like Little River Band. But notice there's nobody worried about Molly Hatchet. There's nobody worried about the Outlaws all that much. Some of these bands can just go on, and fans don't care all that much. They want to hear the music they grew up listening to, and they want to hear a pretty good representation of that music. So again, to Ricky Metlock, I would say, look, it's up to you guys. If you wanted to recruit someone who sounded more like, Ronnie, you could have at the beginning. But the obvious thing, the Southern rock thing to do was to give the franchise over to Johnny and just have people say, okay, I'm going to listen to Skynyrd with Johnny. It's like Sammy Hagar. It's not that drastic, but hey, Sammy Hagar replaced David Lee Roth, and people just had to accept Van Halen with a singer who sounded nothing like the guy before. Now, I think there are some similarities between Ronnie and Johnny, but not that much. Really not that much. And Donnie, Donnie's kind of in the middle. Donnie retired a few years ago. He's not in 38 Special. And I'm pretty sure even on the Sweet Florida song, he had limited involvement in that, other than, I think, being in the video and singing some background vocals. So hopefully he's doing okay. But again, go back and listen to that Van Zandt album with Help Somebody. I think that's what Johnny was meant to do. Johnny was meant to sing straight up Nashville country. And the Southern rock stuff, he can do it, but sorry, nobody is Ronnie, all right? Ronnie was an original, and that's been my issue from day one. But overall, they're still making pretty good music. I like their politics, and that goes a long way with me. So if they come out with an album and it doesn't suck, I'll talk about it. But there's no way you can get back to that original Skynyrd stuff without Ronnie. All right. Sawyer Brown, still sounding exactly like they did 40 years ago. This is just amazing that they managed to put this album out there and people like it. Country radio, of course, they're going to ignore it. Desperado Troubadours, and yeah, it's ageism. Plus, this doesn't sound like a lousy R&B country album. What this sounds like is a traditional country album, like a 90s country album. So go and listen to it. You won't be disappointed in that. I'm Dave. Thanks for watching. Again, the name of the channel, Real Music Observer. Just Real Music is in there. I know it can be confusing, but if you're looking on like Google or YouTube even, your choices will start populating. And because I talk about politics and how people are mysteriously dropping dead for no reason, according to the obituaries, no reason, just somebody died and that's the end of it. A lot of times the algorithm will just go in a different direction, and it's going to go over to the guy who's just gleefully talking about music and not worrying about any other aspects of humanity. So I get it. I get it. I want to thank the patrons who keep this channel going. Without you guys, there's no way I could do this. There's just no way. So If you'd like to be a patron, there'll be 3 ways to actually support the channel, including Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, and through YouTube memberships. God bless everyone. Stay away from CVS if you can. And also, please pray for peace in the Middle East and around the world, and where else, in your own heart, and also on college campuses today where crazy things are happening. And that's it. See you soon.